Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Kelly Jille. I'm a Java software engineer at Ordina, and I currently have an awesome assignment at the Dutch Forensic Institute. I live together with my other half and mentor Frank in Breda, the Netherlands, with our adventure cat Yada. And yes, an adventure cat is really something. Go to www.adventurecats.org and see that we're not the only geeks. She's named after one of my other heroes, Yoda, who is also a mentor. And Yada also means chosen one in Hebrew. At that point, everything came together. I also like to keep myself busy with the magic of tech, people, health, sports, travel, and riding my motorcycle. To start this talk with, I'd like to introduce you to one of my childhood heroes, Mr. Miyagi. And before I do so, I would like to know something first. Please raise hands if you're thinking, Mr. Who? Okay, well, don't worry, because we'll come to this right now. I would like to take you to the time when I was about 8 years old. I remember very well that at that age, you were old enough to ask your parents if you could stay up longer if you didn't have to go to school the next day, so that you could watch a nice movie. One weekend evening, I asked my parents, my very first mentors, "Can I please stay up tonight to see Karate Kid?" And they said yes, because I didn't have to go to school the next day. And that's how I met Mr. Miyagi. I think I can't introduce Mr. Miyagi to you any better than the main character in the story, Daniel, who has been called Daniel's son. You are about to meet the greatest guy. This guy, he's funny, he's smart. I mean, you got a problem, he's got the answer. He's like no one you ever meet. And on top of that, he just happens to be my best friend. Mr. Miyagi comes from Okinawa, Japan. He has a deep philosophical knowledge of life and extraordinary karate skills. He's genuinely caring, sweet, warm-hearted, and friendly person. He's wise, very, very wise. And he has an ingenious sense of humor. With this package, he was Daniel's karate sensei, a mentor, and he made him a worthy champion. As an 8-year-old, what I liked about Mr. Miyagi is that he made the effort to pass on something he was very good at to a younger generation, selflessly, and initially, without knowing each other well, simply based on the right chemistry they had with each other. I think I even wished he was my grandfather, since I never really had a grandfather figure in my life. And also, because from a very young age, I have wanted to become very good in what I do. Mr. Miyagi's martial arts caught my interest, because I felt that if I could do that, I could always take care of myself. And he thought with morals in place. He was never aggressive and would only fight to defend himself. Showing that he did not allow his abilities to corrupt his mind. He was teaching Daniel both life lessons and karate to protect himself. I was hooked from the moment I saw this movie. I even decided I want to become a Kelly-san, my own hero. Now I'd like to take you with me to some of my own Mr. Miyagis, my own mentors. 2 years passed after my wish to become a Kelly-san, and then it happened. My own karate journey started with my own real sensei. The karate school where I ended up also happened to be one of the 2 best in the Netherlands at the time. So it started to look more and more like Karate Kid in real life. My sensei was a fantastic teacher, completely devoted to what he taught us. He taught us and everyone else in our dojo what he knew and could. With us in this context, I mean the small tournament group I was part of. He taught us all that you can achieve a lot with dedication, discipline, the right mindset, practice, and perseverance. That karate is a weapon, that you must always try to solve things with compassion first. The dojo was inside a primary school where we could train 2 days a week. But with the tournament group, we trained more often, which resulted in us often training outside. I can tell you there were intense times, but those were fantastic. And in the end, I can say that it has borne fruit. In the first place, it made me more confident at school. Getting through secondary school unscathed felt like a challenge of its own. During this time of life, your personality is going through an important development. It will be shaped by negative and positive experiences. I was neither one of the least popular nor one of the most popular students. I remember well that one day I had to deal with, both literally and figuratively, the big bully of the class, who would occasionally slap some of the boys. And I succeeded. I was confident enough when it was needed. In the second place, in my 6 years of karate, I've made it to the brown belt. I have won about 50 prizes. I became national champion in several disciplines and third of Europe. So what, you might think? Well, the point is that mentoring has had a very great impact here. Although meeting my sensei was more a twist of fate, he has been of huge importance in my life, even now. If you are still a little skeptical and think, well, nice example, but I don't quite see it happening on a professional level, stick with me then, because in that case, my second Mr. Miyagi might inspire you. In the second year of my law studies, I wanted to work at a law firm as a part-time job. So I sent application letters, and I was invited to have an interview with my other Mr. Miyagi, or rather, Mrs. Miyagi. I had a choice of several future mentors from different law firms, and finally chose her. We had a great conversation, and it was just right. The chemistry was there. I was confident that she would be a good mentor and would be able to deal with my vulnerabilities. Although we sometimes had our difficulties, because that can also happen in a mentoring relationship, we always managed to work things out together. I really learned so incredibly much from her. I remember well when I just started. One of my first days, she asked me to answer an email with a legal question from a client. And I thought, how do you actually respond properly to your client? I had no idea. And really, that's so basic. Only someone has to tell you. Especially if you imagined your client to be a super duper, very important person and you want to be 100% sure that you answer that person as such on your first working days. I got my first legal document back, all in red. That was the color of the pen, with which everything was corrected. And then I thought, okay, the previous 2 years of my studies were like getting your driver's license. You're not a big danger anymore. You know your theory, but that's all there is to it. You really learn the skill by observing and applying it in practice. Because of her, my learning curve was steep. I was able to become a good lawyer beneath her wings. I soon got my own cases in which she always remained my sounding board. And again, the mentoring relationship has paid off. The legal case that has stayed with me to this day is the one which I assisted a woman who had just recovered from cancer. She wanted to go back to work, but her employer was acting strange. She had an important position at a large banking firm. It became clear that they wanted to get rid of her. It became a case based on the Dutch law regarding equal treatment. An appeal to this law in this context was hardly ever won, at least at the time. Because it was so difficult to prove that someone is being discriminated against based on illness. But I succeeded, and we won the case. Again, because I had the privilege of learning the craft of law from a good mentor. At that time, I had everything in place from a materialistic point of view. But from a certain moment, I went to work crying because work didn't make me happy anymore. In 2014, I decided to quit the legal profession because I believe that you should do what makes you happy in life. And certainly also because I wanted to leave my job well done. Shortly afterwards, within 5 months, even more happened. My father died. My unhealthy relationship came to an end. And with that, I also lost my house. So that was quite a rocky road. I felt completely lost. I no longer knew who, what, where, how, and why. Just when I made the decision to take my motorbike to the other side of the world to find some rest and peace, another Mr. Miyagi crossed my path. And nowadays, he's my best friend. I never went, but I still have my motorcycle, so that's a good thing. After this mentor put his mentoring skills to use and soul-searching from my side, I finally came close to myself. For the first time, I really knew the answer to the aforementioned questions. I had a throwback to the IT lessons I had in secondary school. Back then, we made our own website with HTML and our own currency calculator in Excel. I just couldn't stop and thought, I can do magic, and I absolutely love it. I also remembered that I wanted to become a hacker, so I made the decision to become a software engineer with a passion for security. But don't get me wrong, I still have a lot to learn, by the way. All these mentoring relationships I told you about have been of irreplaceable value to me. They have been life-changing. I've told you these stories for a reason. This talk is based on my experience of mentoring since I was 10 years old. By sharing my experience as a mentee, I hope I can make you feel how powerful mentoring can be. And there is more. When I took my first steps in my career switch to the IT world, I discovered that mentorship is not a matter of course. I was a tester before I started as a software engineer. I was told to take that path if I want to become a software engineer, not having an IT background. I applied. I clearly stated that I want to become a software engineer, and I was hired. I got training, which consisted of doing some internal courses and getting the internal certificates to go with those courses, and I got my TMAP certificate, which is a well-known certificate related to quality engineering. I landed in a fast-paced environment. I certainly learned something, but most of the time I was also trying not to drown. At first, there was no time for real guidance. I asked a lot of questions, but got so many different answers and tips and new questions. It often came down to an even greater challenge not to drown. It was overwhelming. At a certain point, I was kind of paralyzed by analysis and decided that things had to change if I wanted to obtain my goal of becoming a software engineer. Shortly afterwards, I had a fantastic job interview with one of Ordina's directors in a restaurant cafe in Breda, where I come from. And that's how I became a software engineer. And not just that, I also found a mentor again. That has really been a difference of day and night. For example, there are times when I get lost in reading, and when I finally finish reading the documentation, I think, and what have I just learned? Of course, I've learned something, but often I still don't have the answers to many of the questions that made me read the documentation in the first place. Instead, new questions have come up. There are also plenty of moments when I have to Google pretty much every word in a sentence, concluding there is a lot of jargon. And then jargon in the definitions of jargon, which keep me Googling almost every word in a sentence. While trying to find my way around, try to invent the wheel myself, I keep on missing something. That something is context. And that's where mentorships comes in. Because guess who's giving me that context? My own Mr. Miyagi in the IT world. The over-enthusiastic tech lead who cannot stop talking when I ask him a question. And don't get me wrong, I totally love the over-enthusiasm. Because every time, over and over again, that's what gives me the crucial context. It really brought home for me the importance of mentorship again. And then it clicked. I have been driven by the question why all my life. My mother always tells me that I used to ask her so much questions that it became annoying. Just so you know. So when I found out that mentoring is not a matter of course in the IT world, I thought, why? What a pity. And that's exactly the reason why I'm sharing my experience and ideas with you here today. To add weight to it, I have made a link with research. I looked at whether my own experiences and ideas can be found in society, science, or both, so that they are research-backed. Now that I have shared some experiences with you, I would like to take a look at the following question with you. What exactly is mentorship? I run with this definition. Mentoring is a learning relationship involving the sharing of skills, knowledge, and expertise between a mentor and mentee through developmental conversations, experience sharing, and role modeling. The relationship may cover a wide variety of contexts and is an inclusive two-way partnership for mutual learning that values differences. If you ask me, mentoring is also a skill and an art that you learn by experiencing it, by doing it, by being it. Mentoring takes different forms, and they are all important. For the rest of my talk, I will focus specifically on apprenticeship. Almost all of my experiences, which I've just shared with you, involve this form of mentorship. Apprenticeship focuses on the development of the apprentice, the mentee, where the master, the mentor, trains the apprentice to one day become a master himself. Translated to the IT world, apprenticeship is the training of a new generation of developers through the combination of a general study program enforced with on-the-job training from a mentoring relationship. I'd like to bring up Robert Greene here. This is Robert Greene. He is the author of the books The 48 Laws of Power and Mastery. In his book, The 48 Laws of Power, he states the ultimate form of power is mastery. In his book Mastery, he explains the power of apprenticeship by explaining the biographical stories of great masters such as Darwin, Da Vinci, and Goethe. Before they became masters of their chosen field, they were apprentices themselves. He says the following about the apprenticeship model. The greatest system ever invented for the training of skills and the achievement of tacit knowledge. In other words, context. He also speaks about the apprenticeship phase, which he describes as follows. After your formal education, you enter the most critical phase in your life, a second practical education known as the apprenticeship. Every time you change careers or acquire new skills, you re-enter this phase of life. Looking at ourselves, don't we often say that we actually learn on the job? The word mentor comes from ancient Greece. According to Homer's Odyssey, mentor is Odysseus' counselor and friend. Looking at my own experiences and the outcomes of my research, I can actually conclude that a mentor generally helps the mentee by challenging and encouraging the mentee, giving emotional moral support, being a sounding board, discussing goals and how to get there, giving advice, integrating the mentee into work processes, the work environment, the organization's culture, and politics. Let's say the how we do things here part, and helping to build a network. A mentor helps the mentee to walk the path he already walked by sharing his mistakes, his woes and wins. The mentor already overcame similar challenges and obstacles that a mentee may encounter on that path. It has given me insight and confidence in the things I do. Besides, I could grow safely beneath the wings of my mentor. It helped me to have a steep learning curve. It is also worth pointing out that the mentoring relationship is one which also benefits the mentor. This is also reflected in the definition of mentoring we just saw. Through the dynamics of mentoring, the mentor is in turn challenged in his mastery. In being so, he develops his leadership skills, management skills, and interpersonal skills. Who is the mentor? Mentoring will only have a positive impact on mentees, mentors, and organizations as a whole if it's done in a good and thoughtful way. In fact, at its worst, mentoring can do enormous harm to a person. This lies in the nature of the mentoring relationship, because it's based on respect, openness, and trust. It reveals vulnerabilities. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, being a mentor comes with a duty. The duty to do what lies within one's circle of influence to make it a positive experience. On the one hand, by focusing on someone's talents and strengths. On the other hand, by being open and honest about someone's improvement points. A good mentor is one who is really capable of giving constructive feedback. Strict but fair. It must be someone you can discuss with freely and without fear. Someone who has the mentee's best interests at heart and who understands the path the mentee is walking. That being said, this also means that not just anyone is suitable for the mentoring role. A mentoring relationship can make or break a mentee. So now I'm going to unpack 10 best practices. Number 1, a free choice. It might sound like common sense, but it's not. It's very important to let the mentor and the mentee choose each other. You can't force a mentoring relationship. There needs to be some good chemistry. That tends to be a good starting point. Also give the mentee the freedom to change mentors if things don't work out along the way, or if other skills and knowledge are needed at a certain point. Number 2, train a mentor. Considering mentoring's fragile nature, it should not be taken lightly. In any case, let the mentor walk his own path as a mentor with a set of basic skills. Think of certain coaching skills, for example, how to guide without judging, how to give feedback. Number 3, match. Make a match based on working and learning style. That's really important. Let the mentor and mentee calibrate with each other. Make sure that they discuss each other's do's and don'ts. Make sure the mentees and mentors' goals, interests and needs are aligned so that they have a good time. Let them have lunch together, for example. Number 4, trust-based relationship. The mentoring relationship is based on trust. So what happens there must stay there. In order to let them build trust, give them enough time, space, and contact moments. You can't force trust. An agenda. Set an agenda, which may also consist of just having a chat without an agenda or taking a walk. It is also good to agree on intermediate goals and follow-ups together. In that way, you really work towards something together. No copy and paste. This is really, really important. The mentee is not a clone of the mentor. It's very nice to hear how a mentor experienced things, what it was like in his time, what mistakes he made, what the mentor wants to protect the mentee from, what he learned. I think you got it so far, right? But the mentee is definitely not a mini-me. Because a mentor shares a lot of himself, this is a major pitfall. The key here is empathy. Being able to feel and understand how somebody else experiences the world. Without judging. The mentor must therefore be able to step out of his own frame of reference. He should ask the mentee what the biggest barriers are to success right now. With what he can help. Ask how the mentee learns the best, because everybody does that in a different way. The answer to these questions may not be the same as what the mentor has been used to all of his life. and he must be able to deal with that. Last but not least, every senior and mentor should not forget how some things they learn now might be easier to learn because they can build on the things they have already learned before. They too started in the apprenticeship phase with their own challenges and struggles. 7. The workflow. Make mentoring part of the workflow. As an employer, clients offer a sufficient amount of hours. Apart from the on-the-job training and everything that comes with it and happens more organically, you can think of an average of 1 hour a week. Get some seniors and tech leads who have the core skills and knowledge about the technologies you want, as well as the ability to be good mentors. Put your money where your mouth is by truly providing those growth and development opportunities. You will get very good new employees in return. 8. A mentoring program. Provide a mentoring program. Take different groups into account, for example, students, graduates, and lateral entrants like me. It's different from an onboarding or young professional program with basic training. It's complementary to that and a multiplier to its success. Create a moment of evaluation by asking feedback from the participants. Plan a moment of reflection for yourself. After all, improvements are mainly discovered along the way. Let it become a matter of continuous improvement and fine-tuning. The mentee's performance. The mentor is not responsible for the mentee's performance. It's up to the mentee what he does and doesn't do. The mentor only supports the mentee. 10. Mistakes and successes. Appreciate the mistakes. Celebrate the successes. And please, 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 do not only say it, but live it. Give the mentee enough chances to grow just by making those mistakes. The greatest growth takes place outside the comfort zone. But that's also the space where the most mistakes are made. So make sure that there's really a culture in which mistakes can be made. The thing that gets me even more than a missed opportunity that mentoring is not yet normalized in our community is what I'm going to tell you now. As a community, we have a big problem. But before I dive into it, I would like you to ask yourself this. Did I have to deal with delayed releases? Missed revenues? Increased project costs? An excessive workload or higher stress level? An increase in project duration or operational costs? Reduced quality of the software developed? A limited ability to meet the objectives of the business? If your answer to one or more questions is yes, then I have bad news. If your answer to every question was no, then I have the same bad news. Because this is what our future looks like if we keep doing what we are doing now. According to CompTIA's data, the required level of expertise in job requirements for software developers is mainly between 3 and 10 years of experience. The demand for juniors lags behind, even though they are the meteors and the seniors of our future. According to Skillsoft's data, 75% of global IT decision makers report a skills shortage in the IT workforce. This is an increase of 145% since 2016. Here are some other numbers to put this into a little more perspective. It is expected that in 2022, the financial impact of the IT skills shortage will result in a loss of $775 billion worldwide. This is due to delayed releases, missed revenues, or increased costs. In 2019, this was $302 billion. So right now, there are simply not enough qualified candidates. It's probably a dead giveaway, but I'll say it anyway. Doing nothing changes nothing. Except for these outrageous numbers, which only get worse. So doing nothing costs more and more time and money. As a developer, you notice this, for example, by an excessive workload and higher stress levels. Other signs are an increase in project duration and operational costs, reduced quality of software developed, or a limited ability to meet the business objectives. Mentoring is the solution for our community's problem. Mentoring turns out to be a good talent management strategy. It ensures learning and growth within the company culture. This is because employees play an active role in sharing knowledge and best practices. By doing so, a company shows that it values investing in development and that it values its workforce. Mentees have better career outcomes than employees without a mentor. Besides, they feel more engaged and satisfied in doing their work. I can tell you that. This in turn leads to higher employee retention. I get a lot of job offers, but I really want to stay at Ordina at this moment. The performance of mentees is higher than for employees without a mentor. Mentors also experience greater engagement and satisfaction than non-mentors. It also provides a setting in which more new things are created and shared. If mentoring becomes an integral part of an organization, it can be carried out in a more cost-efficient and scalable way. I strongly believe that we can create the meteors and seniors of the improved future. We can do this by matching today's students and juniors with a mentor. And beyond that, the system has survived for so long for a reason. Other professions have applied mentoring successfully for many years. Sometimes it's even mandatory, for example, in a legal profession. The mentee doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. He gets the tacit knowledge, the context, that he cannot get in any other way. It picks up where theory leaves off and lets the mentee build up his own wealth of knowledge, skills, experience, and expertise in an irreplaceable way. That means a steeper learning curve, a faster path to success, and to delivering substantial value to the employer and client. I end up where I began, to complete the circle. With karate. For me, mentoring is like a kata. In ancient times, the kata was developed by masters or practitioners of Chinese Kung Fu as a way of archiving their knowledge and passing it on to future generations. Existing forms of knowledge transfer were not suitable for this purpose. Mentoring is just like that, a specific and necessary form of knowledge transfer. It's also crucial to mitigate IT staff shortages as much as possible. I hope my story has made that clear by now. If you search for mentoring success stories yourself, you will find an overwhelming amount of those. I want to leave on the note that it's hard to change in a day, of course. But don't forget the bad news here. If we do nothing, then we are screwed. That's why I'd like to challenge you to think how you can integrate mentorship into your daily work. I'm sure some of you are in the position to bring this into practice. I would appreciate if you did, so that you care for yourself and the people who come after us. Just one passionate person can make a great difference. So imagine what we can do together as a community. Having your own Mr. Miyagi shouldn't be luck, but a given. Be Mr. Miyagi or find one. Are there any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been such a great talk. Yeah, especially I think it's really important when the barriers to entry are constantly changing as well, like every year for people transitioning into the software industry. Do you think psychological safety is quite an important thing to establish the trust between the mentor and the mentee?
Sorry, again?
Do you think that psychological safety is quite important to establish trust between the mentor and the mentee? And do you think it should be done at the start or, yeah, continuously?
All right, so the question is if the psychological trust, the safety, is needed to start with mentoring. Am I right? So yeah, of course, that's important, psychological safety, and I think that's part of the safety thing in a whole. And of course, it starts with meeting each other. You cannot say, okay, here we have the psychological safety. I think you build that with seeing each other, meeting each other, having the lunch, which I just suggested. And then I think the psychological safety will come on its own. So yeah, I think it's really important, but it isn't there from the beginning, of course. Some other questions?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, do you have any take on if it should be the mentor and the mentee in the same team, or if they could be in different teams too?
So I think in my experience, I had a mentor in my own team. And I think if you have the apprenticeship model, that's the best way to do it, because otherwise you can't be together a lot of time. And I think the apprenticeship model is just that good because working together is basically the thing you do every day. So I think it's better to have a mentor and a mentee in one team. But of course, if you can't have a mentor in your own team, just start by finding a mentor out of your team, but just start with it, because I also think it can help if a mentor isn't in your team.
I guess more again, thank you very much for the talk. From a more, I guess, practical perspective, how would you suggest going out and finding a mentor, I guess, in an industry which doesn't necessarily, as you've said, sort of prescribe that by default?
So, sorry, I forgot to repeat the question before. But the question now is how to find a mentor or be a mentor then? Are there some platforms or that kind of things? So, yeah, there are some platforms. So, I think the most, well, I don't know if it's the most simple thing. It depends on the person, I think. But, well, one manner to do it is just ask somebody to be your mentor if you like that person and you think you can learn from him or her. If that's not a solution for you, I have two suggestions. Oh, of course. Not on the Wi-Fi. So I think you can go to meetamentor.co.uk. That's one of the platforms of the London Jug, as far as I remembered. It also was suggested in a talk last year. Devox? Oh, I now see you don't see anything. So meetamentor.co.uk. And this is another one, codingcoach.io. And these are two sites where you can subscribe, being a mentee or a mentor.
Are there any tips that you could give to now we're working in COVID world, a lot of us are working remotely, and so having that day-to-day interaction or the face-to-face interaction is not always there. Are there any tips that you could maybe suggest that to assist in that type of that learning?
Yeah, so I started at Ordina during COVID times. So for me, it was completely remote. I think I saw my colleagues for 2 weeks and then we had to work from home. But we worked a lot with teams. So we had a lot of calls together and pair programming sessions. So yeah, of course, I pair program a lot or mob program a lot. And that's really, really useful for a junior. So I'm really happy with that. But if you are pair programming, be sure there's enough time to explain the junior or to give the junior also a try. Because my first assignment was with Java, but the stories needed to be completed so fast that I couldn't write any code myself. I just had the opportunity to look with the senior, but of course that's not the way how you learn things. So yeah, if you work remotely, I think that won't be a problem. Just check in with each other remotely. Like, yeah, of course we don't have the coffee corner, but I think you can still check in with each other by calling each other, by having those sessions.
Thank you. So how long to give before you realize, okay, this mentor-mentee relation is not working? And then how do you politely say no, that, okay, we should look somewhere else, like kind of thing?
So the question is, when a mentoring relationship doesn't work out, at what moment I decide to quit to stop with this mentoring relationship? Well, I think that's gut feeling. I think there's not an X amount of time you should take it into account. I think it depends on the person and it depends on the situation. But I think you should give it a try. Like, we're all humans and we can just have some things with each other. Like, for example, when I was a lawyer, we also had some discussions with each other I didn't like, but it was not that I thought, okay, I just need to stop with it or so. It just, yeah, it's also there. 1 minute left, so does somebody have one last question, or are we done? Okay, I think we're done. Then I have one question. Yeah, so contact me if you want to brainstorm, have some questions afterwards, or you name it. And I would like to ask you to rate my talk through voting through the app or the website of DevFox, because I really love to get the feedback. So if you could do that, you make me a happy developer. Thanks for being here.